MCARBO brother, I'm Chris Nelson, President of MCARBO. Really excited to introduce a new 1022 trigger spring kit for your Ruger 1022. A fantastic 50% trigger pull reduction for a great little 22. Really excited about this. I know there's a lot of options out in the market, but this is a very simple, straightforward, cost-effective way to get a nice, clean, smooth trigger pull. Not only do we go over how to do the actual installation of the spring kit, but we also go over how to polish the hammer and sear engagement surface, giving you a nice, smooth, clean, crisp trigger pull. Really excited about that. Also go into some detail on how to do some cleaning of the 1022. A lot of folks, this may be their first firearm, so we're really excited to at least demo that, give you a good general idea of what you should be cleaning, how to clean it. Not to mention the 1022 has a few little intricacies that make it a little bit different than most firearms. Really excited about this one. Hope you guys enjoy it. Let's get on over to tabletop, put this baby in. Before we get started, let's go ahead and check our firearms together, make sure they're clear. If you've got a magazine, go ahead and drop that now. Check the chamber, check the bolt face, check the magazine well. This firearm's clear. Let's see what kind of factory trigger pull we're starting with. 2 pounds, 13.9 ounces. Let's take one more to confirm. £2, 15.3 ounces. Parts and tools needed for this build: Ruger 1022 trigger spring kit by MCARBO includes a lighter trigger return spring and also an assembly dowel as well. The firearm and feed ramp polishing kit. This is a fantastic kit. This is also optional, so you don't need to do it. We're going to focus primarily on spring installation, but we're going to throw in a few extras, which I'm really excited about. I love polishing. Really excited to show you guys what we're going to do here. Also, if you're going to do the polishing, you're going to need a Dremel or any sort of rotary tool will work for that matter. MCARBO firearm cleaning kit. This is another little bonus. We're going to show you how to clean your Ruger 1022. This may be your first firearm, so I figure we might as well jump into some basic cleaning operations. We've also got a good basic kit here. Really, all the essentials, none of the extras, just everything you need to do the job quickly, effectively, and cover all your bases. Synthetic grease with PTFE, 1/16 inch punch, 3/32 inch punch, 1/8 inch punch, bench block or block of wood with a hole in it's fine, but we also sell these. 4mm Allen key, micro tip flathead screwdriver, hammer, and as always guys, make sure you're wearing iPro. All right, so we're gonna start by separating the barrel from the receiver. What we'll do is lock the bolt back. There's your bolt stop right down here. All right, lock it back. Then go ahead and pull forward on this button and rotate. Pulls right off. Set that barrel aside. All right, before we go any further, let's go ahead and let the bolt go forward. So you gotta hit that bolt release just right. You know, I'm really not a big fan of this bolt release whatsoever. If you guys wanna see something better, let me know. We're really excited to do something for it. You can see how difficult that is. You got to get it just right. So then when you release it, you got to hit that tip just like that. All right, so bolts forward. Now we'll take our 4mm Allen key. We'll go ahead and take this takedown screw out. There's only one back here on the receiver. All right, now we'll pull up on the actual stock, and you'll notice this safety is going to hit the stock immediately. So we want to center it up just between. So you want to get it right before it snaps to the other side, and then it'll come right out just like that. All right, we'll set our stock aside. Now we've got our receiver and trigger assembly. We'll just take our bench block, and what we want to do is tap out these two pins here. They're universal, so don't worry about getting them mixed up. Take your 1/8 inch punch, and it'll just easily fall right out just like that. All right, set our receiver aside. Now we'll focus on our trigger assembly. Put our takedown pins aside, won't need those. They are universal, so don't worry about getting them mixed up. All right, now let's take this trigger assembly apart. All right, let's quickly review the 1022 trigger assembly. It can be a little intimidating to look at first time, if this is the first time you're looking at it. Now this is the ejector right here. Now don't be surprised if your ejector is flipped back like this in some fashion. All right, it goes up forward like this and rests in that little channel just like that. You'll notice your ejector hinge pin here. Also, the bolt stop is right here. So you'll notice we push up on the bolt stop and you'll see that function right there. Also pay attention to that bolt stop spring down there. You see it moving around at the bottom of the trigger assembly. You can see the bolt lock spring moving down there at the bottom of the trigger assembly. Just pay attention to how that little bend in that spring is on the bottom and that straight leg is up top and it's captured under that ejector hinge pin. All right, also the loop of the actual bolt lock spring rests in the center on the right side of the trigger assembly, right, on that hammer. that hammer's capturing it, holding it in place inside the trigger assembly on the right side. So that's definitely critical, good to pay attention to. Also the magazine latch, you can see that function there. There's the magazine latch plunger moving in and out. All right, you can see it from the top side here. This hinge pin down here for the bolt lock and the magazine latch, for whatever reason, just loves to fall out. Real easy thing to just pop out of place. So I'm going to quickly show you if it does pop out on you, what'll happen. See, it's already falling out now. So pops out, your magazine latch will just pop out just like this, and there goes your plunger, right? Oh no, what do we do? So you just push it back in, all right, and you'll notice that little top feature right there in the magazine latch is going to locate on the inside of that magazine latch plunger, all right? So push it on the magazine latch plunger, and then push your magazine latch into the trigger assembly, and it's naturally going to align. As long as you've got that plunger pushed in and you push up on that magazine latch, it'll locate right there in that little pocket. See that on the corner? This pocket right here, how it locates together, just like that. So all we have to do now is just drop in that pin, which notoriously loves to fall out. Make sure your bolt lock and magazine latch pin hole line up perfectly. You'll see it centered right there. We'll drop that pin right in. Now if you have any issue, you can push it in from the back side and then take your small 1/16 inch punch and just line it all up. Just kind of wiggle it around as you push that pin through, and you're back in business. But definitely something that can be a little frustrating, especially if this is your first time and it's a big surprise, like where is that gonna go? Easy, quick fix. And then we'll just place our thumb on top of that hammer and pull the trigger and let it go forward. All right, and inside you'll see this hammer spring, which is captured there on the hammer strut. All right, that hammer strut locates into the hammer right there in that pocket nicely. All right, and then our trigger return spring is inside here with that plunger that locates right on the back of the trigger. So that's the spring that we're gonna be replacing. So let's go ahead and jump right into this. First thing we're gonna do is we're gonna push out this ejector hinge pin, all right? There's our ejector right there. Set that aside. Push our hinge pin all the way out. You heard that bolt lock spring pop up. This is our bolt lock spring right here. That portion with the bend in it is what's gonna be actually located on that bolt lock, right, when we put it back together. And then this long straight leg is what's gonna be captured under that ejector hinge pin, which we just removed. Now we're gonna go ahead and push out on this hammer pin here. So this hammer hinge pin is actually silver, real easy. It's the only one that's silver. All right, we'll set that aside. Now we're gonna go ahead and pull up on the hammer, and with it will be that bolt lock spring, right? Just like we had talked about. We can go ahead and set those aside. And then our hammer strut and hammer spring, that'll come right out just like that. All right, you can see how it's captured. No need to pull that apart. We'll go ahead and set that aside. Okay, and now we've got the trigger down in here with the Sear and the disconnector. All right, now grab your 3/32 inch punch, push out this trigger hinge pin right here. All right, there it is. Now this is the shorter one. It's the shortest of all of them. We'll set that aside. All right, now we can go ahead and pull out that punch and try to keep it all together. Now there is an assembly tool inside the kit. You could also just push that assembly tool in there. Now before we pull the trigger out of the trigger assembly, let's go ahead and open up our Ruger 1022 trigger spring kit by MCARBO. You'll notice there's your replacement trigger return spring. Also have this assembly dowel, which is very handy. I like it for the disassembly and assembly because it makes life a lot easier keeping everything together inside that trigger. All right, so I'm just gonna leave that spring in there for now, but I am gonna use that assembly dowel right this second, which is really handy. Now we'll go ahead and take our assembly dowel here and push out that trigger hinge pin. The nice thing is, as we're pushing that out, it's gonna get captured inside that assembly and keep it all together, which is a really nice thing. We like to make it as frustration-free as possible. So there it is, captured inside. All right, now we'll push it right up and out. And as you're doing that, your trigger return spring and plunger will fall out as that trigger goes up. Then just guide it right out of there. There's our trigger, sear, and disconnector right there. We'll go ahead and set our detent and trigger return spring down. So now you can see there's not much left in that trigger assembly. You've got your bolt lock there. You've got your magazine latch still in place. You've got that pin that loves to fall out. Put a little synthetic grease on there on the outside. That might just hold it in place while you're trying to do the rest of the installation. And then also the safety still remaining, but that's it. So we've got everything out of there. We can go ahead and set our trigger assembly aside. Now let's look at that trigger we just pulled out. So that assembly dowel does a real nice job just keeping it intact so that you can see what's going on as you pull the rest of it out. So we'll push out that little dowel right there, set that aside. This is your Sear right here with the Sear spring captured right there in that little pocket. All right, so we will be doing some work on this Sear. Notice that there's a lot of impression marks here. These are casted. So these are actually poured in a mold. This is kind of a cheap material. You can see they're not machined, it's just casted metal. There's a big burr right here, some kind of defect. If you look at that closely, you can see it, that raised edge, little defect on the side. So we're gonna do some polishing on the Sear. Give us a much cleaner, smoother trigger pull, which I'm really excited about. So we'll keep the Sear and Sear spring together, set those aside. And looking at the rest of the trigger here, we've got our disconnector and disconnector hinge pin as well. So we'll just push those two out. And you can see there's a little pocket there on the disconnector where that Sear spring is captured. So all this will go back together real nicely, fairly straightforward. I hope that disassembly helps make a little sense as we walk through it and talk about it. All right, so these are all the parts you should have here on your table in front of you. So you've got your bolt lock spring right here. You've got your hammer hinge pin. You got your hammer. You've got your captured hammer spring and hammer strut right here. You've got your ejector hinge pin. You've got your Sear spring, your disconnector pin, your trigger hinge pin, your trigger return spring, and the plunger. So these are all the items we should have here. We're gonna go ahead and do some polishing on the Sear and the hammer. So let's jump into that real quick and then we'll pick it back up. This is optional, but I do highly recommend it. It's very simple, straightforward. Let's get into it. All right, let's get into some polishing. So we've got our polishing kit here. We've got our hammer, our Sear, and we've got our Dremel here. Any sort of rotary tool will work. You can get an $8 option from Harbor Freight if you have to. All right, so we've got a pair of nitrile gloves here, which are very handy. They're gonna help be a good little heat barrier as well, because these parts do get hot. Microfiber towel. Not to mention this process is very messy, so I would highly encourage you to be wearing eye pro, all right? You don't want to get any flits in your eyes. These little bullet-shaped felt bits are fantastic. They're going to get into all those little crevices. And then we've got our half-ounce can of flits here, which is just the industry standard when it comes to any sort of firearm polishing. So we've got plenty of flits there, keep us going. Let's go ahead and get our work area set up here. I like to use this little towel as a base. It's really handy, and you can polish with it. So it's a nice little kit, get you going in the right direction here. All right, now we'll take our Dremel, we'll go ahead and hit that lock button, put one of these bits in, tighten it right up. All right, and we're ready to go. Now what we'll do here is we're gonna focus on a couple key surfaces on these two components. So we've got our hammer and our Sear. So we're gonna focus on this engagement surface right here on the hammer and this engagement surface right here on the Sear. Now these both are casted metal, molded parts. So they're not even machined. You'll notice there's a huge imperfection right here in the Sear, just crazy. So we can go ahead and polish the entire thing. It's not gonna hurt anything. But most importantly, these two engagement surfaces, I would never recommend sanding this stuff. Polishing will not remove material. It'll just smooth out any sort of those burrs, any sort of those inconsistencies from the process and this molding process. And you can feel it's gritty too. Just rubbing these two engagement surfaces together, you can feel that drag. It's almost like sandpaper rubbing against each other. So never do any sanding to these features. It's just too easy to mess up, and why take that risk? So go ahead and just do it right, do some polishing, smooth it up, do the trigger job, and you're in business. You're gonna get everything you want out of a nice trigger job. Polishing, springs. Do the things right, do not do any sanding. There's a ton of videos out there showing sanding, and just, it is a no-go, man. Do it the right way. So you can't mess it up with the polishing. You can go as long as you want. 15, 30 minutes would be about average. You don't need to go much more than that. So let's go ahead and jump into it. What we'll do, throw our gloves on since we got them. Might as well. I mean, they're handy. It is gonna get super messy. And like I said, that eye pro is a good idea. And if you're on your kitchen table right now, maybe you wanna put some newspaper out as well, because it'll go pretty far. All right, so what we'll do is we'll saturate this bit. All right, now we're gonna go ahead and we'll start with the Sear right there on this most important feature, that engagement surface, but we're gonna coat the rest of it, give it a nice little shine. Might as well. We're already this far. All right. So let's go ahead. We'll start medium speed and then we'll crank it up. All right, I always like to do a quick little initial pass. Gives us the opportunity to see, how fast we can go and see how much we're actually accomplishing just with that medium speed pass. We don't want to go too crazy all at once. So you can see it's already starting to show some good improvement, but we definitely need to do a lot more. You can see all that filth coming off of there now. So we're going to coat it back up again. We're going to crank up the RPMs. We're going to clean off our bit a little bit so you can saturate it with some of that flitz. You can wipe it off, kind of extend the life of that bit and get some of that grime off of there. We don't want to keep polishing grime into these microscopic surfaces. So we got it all polished up here. We got the bit all saturated up here, ready to go. Crank up the RPMs. Let's really do some polishing here. All right, that part's really starting to heat up now. So that's kind of your indicator too. That's a good time to stop and check your work. When you really start to feel some heat on that part, no need to overheat it, stress it in any way. We want to improve this thing as much as possible. So we're just going to take our time with it. Man, you can already see it starting to come to life here, which is really exciting. We're getting a lot of filth off of there, really smoothing out those imperfections. Especially with this casted part like this is just metal poured into a mold. So there's definitely some very obvious imperfections as you saw on that Sear. So we're really making some nice improvements already. You can already see that thing coming to a nice shine here, really smoothing out all those imperfections. Even that little side right there that was really noticeable in the beginning of the video on this Sear, it's starting to smooth out a little bit. So polishing does a nice number, getting rid of all those burrs, but it doesn't change that geometry. It just smooths out all of the imperfections. Really phenomenal. Really excited about this. Let's keep going with it. We'll do another pass, really focusing on that engagement area primarily, but it's nice to clean up the part since you've already come this far. you might as well get it a nice little bling going, which always looks good inside, looks nice, looks custom. This is a really inexpensive way to take your firearm to the next level. I love polishing. It's just really simple and easy. You know, they don't have time from the factory to make sure everything is pristine and polished. The guns would be too expensive. That's a lot of manual labor put in there. But, you know, we got time on a weekend. This is a great project. So let's go ahead and fire it up again and finish this thing up. Oh man, there it is right there, guys. This is what it's all about. Man, that is beautiful. I love polishing just because you can see those results just in minutes right before your eyes as you're just running through that part. Every little detail makes all the difference. Just look at that and get it shined up a little bit here. And you can continue to polish even with this microfiber towel. But if you got the Dremel, I mean, it makes a big difference. You're going to make a lot more progress much faster. That's nice. So we'll clean it up with a little CLP too at the end. It'll really have a nice blinging shine, but you can already see it coming through there. That's going to be just buttery smooth, man. Wow. All right, cool. Let's go ahead and set the sear aside. We'll grab our hammer and do the same thing. And you can continue the rest of the part if you like. I'm mostly focused on that engagement surface right here, just because that's the biggest priority. I even went through the rest, kind of get some of that grime and some of that, you know, that other grittiness off the rest of the part. We want it to function nicely when it's back in the trigger assembly and it's interacting, that engagement with the other components. So we want it to be smooth, nice, clean, smooth, consistent trigger pull. So really excited about this. Let's go ahead, set the sear aside. Now we're going to grab the hammer. So now we got the hammer. This is the face of the hammer, right? This is the strike face. And then we've got the engagement area back here on the bottom, all right? That little cutout, okay? So this little notch down here is what we're going to focus on, but we're going to get this whole little circle radius down here, just smooth it all up. This is an engagement area. It's, you know, a functioning component of the hammer, so we want to make sure it's a nice, smooth, clean function as it's rotating back and forth, interacting and engaging with that sear. So we'll go ahead and we're going to polish right back here, but we can do the rest of the part too. It's not going to hurt it. It's nice to shine it up and get a nice, good looking finished part. So we'll go ahead and same thing. We can change out the bit. It's probably a good idea at this point. You just hit that lock. Might be handy to grab your pliers, loosen up that collar, grab your new bit, drop it right in, tighten it right up. All right, we're ready for business now. So we'll just saturate our bit like we did in the beginning. And you can start off on medium speed again, but just for the sake of this video, I'm just going to go full throttle here. And I'm getting the whole part coated. All right, we're going to give our first initial pass. We're going to get as much of it as we can. All right, let's do this. All right, it's getting pretty hot now, so I'm going to go ahead and just wipe it off, let it cool for a second, inspect our work, get a lot of that grime off of there. You know, it's a great time to do it. You don't want to be grinding the grime back into it. We'll clean up our bit as well. Just saturate it in the flits, and then just wipe it off with a towel. Really gets a lot of that filth off of there. We'll get our bit ready to go for the next round. All right, we really focus down there on that bottom, that engagement surface there, that little cutout, that notch. Man, it's already coming together. I mean, it's still kind of covered in flits. We're going to coat it back up. Let's do it again. It's going to make some good progress. It really all comes together at once here. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Man, I really love polishing. I just can't stress it enough. The impact it's going to give you, it's really, hands down, the best way to do a lot of improvement on that grittiness. That, with changing the springs out for something lighter, your trigger pull is going to be so much smoother, lighter, cleaner, more consistent. Not to mention, a nice polished part is a lot easier to clean than a just gritty, burred up, gross part that's going to hold all that carbon. It's going to stick to it like glue. A nice polished part, it's just like butter. You're just going to literally take a little CLP, it'll wipe right off. It's simple to clean. You know, it's going to help prolong the life of the part. You're not going to have all that gross wear as these parts are engaging with one another. You know, it's, oh man, oh, that is worth it. Right there, that is smooth. You don't feel any burrs. You don't feel that grittiness like pieces of sandpaper rubbing together. That is what we want. You can't achieve that with casted metal parts. You know, they're always going to have burrs, imperfections. They're made fast. They weren't designed to be perfect. But this is a good way to get close to it right here. Polishing is worth every bit of time that you put into it. And, you know, the kit is cheap. All you need is a rotary tool and a $10 polishing kit, and you're in there. So it's definitely worth it, and I enjoy it. I mean, seeing these parts come to life, you know, from a tired out looking gross, burred up part to a nice, smooth, highly polished, professional, clean looking part, night and day effect. Really love it. So I'd highly recommend it. I'm gonna clean this up, get our life back together here on the workbench. You probably need to do the same as well. Then we'll jump right back into the reassembly and the installation of the lighter trigger return spring. All right, so we're back. Everything's back together now. These are the components that you should have in front of you here for the trigger assembly. So what we did was we polished these really nicely. Really impressed with how well these turned out. Just phenomenal. Just nice, smooth, clean edges. you know, especially in these key engagement surfaces right here. Just phenomenal. Really impressed with it. You don't feel any grittiness at all. It's nice and buttery smooth. Love that. You know, we even took the rest of this part, gave it a nice good once over in specific areas. You know, your disconnector is going to be back here, so it's also nice that we covered these edges back here as well. We just want nice, smooth, clean operation. We don't want any grittiness, any burrs, any hang-up. It's not necessary. So we took it to that next level, really perfected these parts. We should see some great improvement with how that trigger pull feels, which I'm really excited about. Now, just to top it all off, we'll take our synthetic grease with PTFE, and we'll just put some down here in the engagement surfaces, just so it's extra smooth. You know, we might as well, we've already gone this far with it. We're gonna go ahead and just do the best we can to get this nice, buttery smooth trigger pull. So really excited about that. Just gonna get this edge too where the disconnector is gonna be functioning. Another nice little trick is to put some down in that pocket where the Sear spring is gonna be. That'll help it locate in place, which I absolutely love doing, especially when you have an assembly like this and you're trying to make sure everything stays together. It's nice just as far as a frustration-free reassembly. Always look forward to doing it that way. All right, so we're gonna first start off with putting the trigger back together, and you can see I kind of laid everything out in a way that makes sense so that we're not looking all over the place for these parts. But just from left to right, we'll go over it. You've got your ejector right here, your ejector hinge pin. You've got your bolt stop spring right here. You've got your hammer hinge pin. You got your hammer spring and hammer strut, which is captured. We didn't take it apart. You got your Sear spring, your disconnector, your trigger. Then you've got these two trigger pins here. This silver one here, the smaller one, is for your disconnector, and this bigger one here is for the actual Sear up front. And then we've got our trigger return spring. This is the factory one, and we've got our plunger. All right, so what we'll do is we're gonna go ahead, do some of these things right now. So we're gonna go ahead and put the lighter trigger return spring in. All right, we're also gonna need that little assembly dowel. So we got the MCARBO spring here in my left hand, and then here's the factory spring here. So we'll go ahead and just compare them really quick, see how they differ in springiness. I always like to do this because it gives you a good idea. You can see, man, that MCARBO spring is super light, which is gonna give us that nice extra advantage. It's gonna get much more cleaner, smoother trigger pull. Yeah, much more springy spring. It's definitely a stiffer factory spring and no real reason to have it that stiff. It's just a trigger return spring, so it's nice. All right, we're gonna really lighten this thing up. So we'll put our factory spring aside, don't need that. We'll go ahead and put our MCARBO spring right there on that plunger so that it's ready to go. And we will start this reassembly process. First and foremost, we'll start with the trigger. And what we'll do is we'll take the Sear with the Sear spring already in there like we just demonstrated. Love using that synthetic grease with PTFE. Take our little assembly dowel and stick it in that hole. That'll help keep the Sear in place. And then we'll take our disconnector. You see that little cutout there on the disconnector? That's where the spring is captured, right? So we'll go ahead and we'll drop that right on top of that Sear spring, compress it. We want to make sure we line up this hole inside the trigger so we can drop in that little silver pin. Line up the hole, drop in the silver pin. All right, we're good. So the nice thing is that silver pin, you don't have to worry about it because it's captured within the trigger. This little dowel replicates kind of the same idea. With the Sear hinge pin, it would stick out too far because it does locate inside the trigger assembly. Now, one quick function we want to definitely check before we go forward is this right here. So you want to be able to push down the Sear, push down the disconnector, make sure they're snapping and clicking in place. Perfect. All right, so we're ready to go. This assembly is ready. All right, next we're going to take our trigger return spring with the plunger. I like to put a little synthetic grease right there on the end of that plunger just so it all stays together, especially during reassembly. It's nice. Helps hold springs in place, which is really handy. All right, now we'll take our trigger guard housing assembly. All right, and we're gonna drop in our trigger return spring and plunger into this hole here on the trigger guard. All right, on the back side. Okay, drop that right in. There we go. So that's all staged and ready. Now we're gonna go ahead and grab our trigger and drop that in, get it captured, and then we'll move forward onto the hammer. So grabbing the trigger, we already put this together. It's staged and ready, that little sub-assembly. We'll drop it right in. And what I'm doing is I'm already pushing in on that plunger there. And now we're fishing the trigger down in here. All right, get that face to locate right there in that plunger. It's nice and captured. And now we'll focus on trying to line up the hole on that Sear. Okay, so there's that little wooden dowel right there. It's ready to go. Now grab your 3/32 inch punch, and we're going to go ahead and drop it right in that hole, because the diameter on that dowel is not really big enough to match the diameter on this hole on the trigger guard itself. So what we'll do is we've got that 3/32 inch punch in there, which is a bigger diameter than that little dowel. And now we're going to take our trigger hinge pin and we're going to push it right through. So we're going to follow that punch. And the nice thing too with the punch is you can move it. So if you feel that hinge pin's not quite lining up, you can move it around a little bit as you're pushing with that hinge pin. Kind of makes a nice little counter effect if you get into a bind there. It doesn't hurt to take a second look, but it is a few items that you're trying to line up all at once. The other thing you can do is push down on the tabletop, which is definitely handy. I'd recommend doing that. And once you got it lined up, it fits right in place. All right, good, perfect. Okay, so we've got our trigger back in. All right, we got our trigger return spring installed, the lighter trigger return spring. So these are the only items left. We've got our ejector hinge pin, we've got our hammer hinge pin, we've got our hammer spring and strut, and we've got our bolt lock spring here. So what we'll do is we will take our hammer with the bolt lock spring. Remember, those go together, right? They're going to go in like this. Okay, we're going to drop that right in and then get that hammer hinge pin in there. So grab these items. So go ahead and position the hammer just like this with the spring pinched together with your two fingers. So now we've got our hammer pinched just like so. We've got that spring on the right side. All right, the little bend is down. The straight leg is facing up, just pinched along the side of the hammer just like that. Now we'll push our bolt lock up, get that out of the trigger housing so that we can actually slide in the hammer. Those ears will clear. All right, now we can push that bolt lock back down. It's captured on top. Now it's just a matter of lining up the holes. You can see you're fighting a little bit of that tension on the trigger to try to get that hole lined up. So it does help to be able to drop a punch in there and follow it back out. So we'll just take our larger punch. Now that we got that hole mostly lined up, take our 1/8 inch punch, drop it right in, and that'll maintain most of that alignment for us. Now we'll take our hammer hinge pin and we'll push it through as we push out the punch. And all the while using that punch to kind of steer along the way if we need to. All right, good. So we got the hammer in there. We've got our bolt lock spring in place. All right, you can see how it's locating down there on the bolt lock. Perfect. All right, exactly what we want. And we've got the straight leg up top. That's about to be captured here in a second. So let's go ahead and do that. What we'll need to do is grab our ejector. Okay. See that little tip is up. So we'll drop it right in. And then our ejector hinge pin. So I'm going to start from the back side like this. And what I'm going to do is position that spring right away. So I'm going to push down on that spring. All right, so I captured that straight leg. Now I'm going to take the ejector. I'm going to pull it up. I've got it right in place. And I'm going to push right through on that ejector hinge pin. And once it goes through the ejector, it just did. Now we need to get it right through that bolt lock. All right, so we'll push up on that bolt lock just a hair to get that hole to clear, and then we push right through. All right, you can take your punch to kind of even up that hinge pin a little bit, make sure it's flush on both sides, or if it's recessed appropriately, same amount on each side. So there, most of it's back together at this point. Now all we need is our hammer spring, and that's it. So we've got our hammer spring and strut. I like to take this little beveled edge. You'll see there's a sharp edge here. I face that away from me, the little beveled edge, rounded edge, point that towards me. So we'll go ahead and we'll pull on the trigger, get that hammer forward. All right, this is the sharp edge, beveled edge. I've got that facing me. And what we'll do is we'll drop in the base of that strut first, get it to locate inside that hole. See that big hole? All right, we want to get to locate in there. So if you need to use your punch to kind of steer it around, definitely do that. All right, because it should fit mostly in there. You saw how it just kind of dropped into that channel. Another way to look too is you can see right down in here, you can see that hammer strut, so we know we're in there. All right, good little visual. So now we can push back on that hammer, lock it in place, and we're good to go. We've got our trigger assembly completely put back together, which is really nice. Big hurdle completed. All right, so what we'll do now is we'll test the safety real quick. Push it on safe, pull the trigger, nothing, good. Fire, kind of keep your finger on top of it. We don't want to let it fling forward and throw things out of alignment, but we are good to go. So go ahead and lock that hammer back, put on safe because we don't want that hammer to drop forward. So everything is good to go, ready to go back into the receiver. All right, so these are all the items we have left to put back together. We've made some great progress. All you should have is your buttstock, your barrel, your receiver, your 2 receiver pins, takedown screw, and then your trigger assembly, which has been completed. I quickly want to demo the cleaning kit, how you would clean your 1022. You don't have to go too detailed with it. There's a much more expedient way. Now, if you're going to go through this process, I would highly recommend doing a nice, thorough, detailed cleaning, especially since the trigger assembly is going to be completely torn apart. You can really get into that trigger assembly and clean it up really nice. Now, if you're going to do any cleaning in here, you can definitely take some Q-tips and work on the inside, get some of these surfaces, definitely get the hammer, but you're really not going to get the best cleaning unless you take it all apart completely. I don't recommend doing that. You don't need to do that. That's just if you have the time and if you want to, and especially if you're going to go through this process, I would do it, but I wouldn't make it a point to take the trigger assembly completely apart each and every time. Now, I would make it a point to pull the bolt out and clean the receiver and the bolt really well. That would be definitely a hot item to hit whenever you're doing your cleaning, is the receiver and the bolt, and that goes really for any firearm. Making sure your bolt and receiver are nice and clean, that is the primary goal right there. And then also the barrel. You can quickly take a barrel snake and just run it right through and you're good to go. So we'll quickly demo that now and then we'll put the rest of it back together. Let's go ahead and open up our MCARBO firearm cleaning kit, see what we got here. So you've got a brush, which is very handy. It's gonna help knock loose a lot of that carbon and dirt. You've also got your bore snake, your barrel snake, which is very fantastic. I highly recommend using this barrel snake rather than a steel rod. The steel rod, if you nick that rifling, can have a real devastating impact on your barrel, your accuracy, and everything else. The nice thing about the snake, it coils up real easily, and it's got plenty of good material on there to clean it, and it's also got some of those wire brass bristles here, which will nice deep cleaning, get some of that fouling out of those lands and grooves. Really great. I highly recommend these. These are the best thing, and they're not really going to affect or damage your barrel or any of that inherent accuracy in the firearm inside those lands and grooves. Or if you have a steel rod and you're jamming it in there and maybe it gets stuck, you're going to be at risk of damaging your firearm. This is a nice, very simple, fast, and expedient way to clean your barrel. Only need to really run it through a few times. So let's demo that here in a second. You've got your CLP, which is really great stuff. This is mil spec, so this is the same stuff that we had in the Army. I love it, love the smell, works really well. There's a ton of variety of cleaners out there. And then also in the kit, you're gonna get a microfiber towel, which is definitely handy. I mean, it's not like you have to use a microfiber towel, it's just better than a t-shirt, but you can build your own kit too. It's not like you have to buy a kit. I like this kit because it's very basic, very simple, and then you get 10 Q-tips. Q-tips, obviously you can get those anywhere, you probably have them at home. So you can really put together your own kit, but I like to have something available for guys. Maybe you're just in a hurry and you're like, man, just give me what I need, you know, and I'm one of those guys too, where it's like, dude, just give me what I need and we'll call it done. So you got your CLP, microfiber towel, Q-tips, you've got your bore snake, and then you've got your bristle brush here. So standard toothbrush would work too, you know, and I had one of those for a long time in my cleaning kit, but we just wanted to put something nice together for you guys that would make sense, very cost effective, straightforward. You don't need to buy any Gucci cleaning kit. You just need something that'll help you clean a lot of that carbon and filth out of the firearm, and that's really it. Just getting the big majority stuff. You don't always have to break it down and do a real detailed, fine cleaning. You gotta do something that makes sense. You know, we're all busy, so we just need to hit the major points here. So that's key whenever you're doing any sort of cleaning, and this applies to cleaning all your firearms, really. So we're gonna start with the barrel first. Nice thing about 1022, it's already broken down. So you've got, you know, anything that you see that doesn't look 100%, I forgot, with these, you're gonna have that little cap in there. So just go ahead and pop that thing out. Just a little leak seal. All right. So we'll get some CLP on our microfiber towel. Clean up the end of the barrel here. All right, now we're gonna run some CLP right down the barrel. So I got the other end of the barrel on my towel, dump some CLP in there, and then I'm gonna follow it up with the snake. So the way the snake works, it's got this little brass bit right here, and you can see, so right on the bit, it'll tell you what the caliber is for the actual snake, and this is a 22, right? 22, also work 223. So a lot of these are universal with different calibers in that they're close enough. So we're sliding that thing right down through the barrel. Now you always want to go the direction of the bullet, right? So you don't want to go back and forth. And that's the nice thing about the snake, it only goes one way. You don't have to worry about that. Whereas with the rod and the brush, you know, that could be a potential pitfall there. So we're going out the muzzle here. So you can see there's the brass bit there, the other end of the snake. All right, and I'm just pulling it right through, and you'll see this thing just feed right in. Just make sure it's not all coiled and tangled, but it'll feed right through real nice. I mean, there will be a little bit of resistance. It is a nice, good fit, good cleaning, and right through, and it'll pop right out the other end here. There we go. All right, that was one pass through. Usually I'll do 2 or 3, all right? Super simple. And the nice thing is too, it's field expedient. So maybe you're out hunting or whatever, you're not gonna be lugging around a big, you know, hard case with your cleaning kit and all that. This could go in your pocket, backpack, you know, simple, efficient, exactly what you need. Simple. All right, so I'm just doing 2 for the sake of the video length here. All right, so that's cleaning the barrel. Real easy, you know, get a lot of that carbon fouling out of there, and we're good to go. All right, so we'll set that aside. Now we're gonna focus on the receiver. All right, so next in the cleaning process is to remove the bolt, clean the inside of the receiver, clean the bolt really good. Now in the 1022, there is a bit of a unique process here. You can see there's your bolt stop pin here. All right, we need to push that out first. That'll give us enough clearance to actually get the bolt all the way out. So just take your 1/8 inch punch, push that bolt stop pin right out. All right, now this is gonna give us the extra room we need to pull back completely on the bolt and actually get it out of the receiver. So you're gonna pull all the way back. All right, you'll notice when it's pulled all the way back that it will, if you pull up on it, capture and lock right there on that part of the receiver. So you can see it locates right there, it'll lock right in place. So I'm gonna push it down really quick, show you that again. So you pull all the way back on the charging handle, right? And then you can pull up on that bolt just a hair, and you'll see that it'll just lock in place right there. So what we need to do is continue pulling up on that bolt so that we can actually remove the charging handle and recoil spring guide assembly. So what I like to do is pull down on that bolt, pulling up on it like that, and then I'm pushing up on the recoil guide rod and spring assembly. And what that'll do is allow it to pop forward, and now it's out of the bolt. So we're good now. So you should be able to just drop it over, the bolt falls right out, and then there's your recoil spring, guide rod, and charging handle assembly. So it's all disassembled now, your bolt, your charging handle and recoil guide rod, and now your receiver. So we got access to all of it. Now let's do a good, thorough cleaning. All right, so now we're gonna go ahead and clean all 3 of these pieces really well so we can take our Q-tips and we can get busy on some of these tight crevices, or we can initially start by getting it all saturated. Say for instance, the bolt is just filthy. You can start by saturating the bolt and brushing it really well all the way around. All right, bolt face, the inside. I mean, really nice, good all-around cleaning, depending on how dirty it is. This one's not that dirty, but you could use this brush to knock loose all that grit, grime, and carbon buildup, and then take your microfiber towel, you know, wipe it all off really good. Then you can take your Q-tip, get in some of these tight places here, the extractor, you know, you can push that aside, bolt face, you know, the inside of the extractor here. Any little tight crevice you can find, really, just get in there and clean it. All right, that's the name of the game. Nice, thorough cleaning. Using your towel, getting all that heavy stuff off. until you're not getting a lot of carbon, filth, and grime on your towel or on your Q-tips, that's pretty much your indication that you're good to go. So you've cleaned the bolt. Now same with the actual charging handle, recoil guide rod. You know, this is when it's nice to have this brush because you can get into this spring here, really get it nice and clean, get all that carbon buildup out of there. Take your towel, wipe it all good. You know, this, you just rinse and repeat here. So this process may go, you know, a few iterations depending on how filthy it is. All right, nice and clean. Now moving on into the receiver. So same deal, you know, get some CLP in there. It's okay, you can really go crazy with it. As long as you clean it up, you know, when you're done. You don't want to be that guy at the range that's got so much CLP in there that it's just oozing out. Or when you're shooting, it's getting in your eyes, you know, so. But it's okay to go overboard with it as you're cleaning. You know, it's part of the process to break down all that carbon buildup. You know, so Q-tips work really well, getting in those tight crevices inside the receiver. You got your brush too, so if you've got some really heavy buildup, you can get in there and get it really clean. All right, don't forget the chamber. You want to get it as thoroughly cleaned as possible. Microfiber towel works really good, picking up all that extra carbon that may be laying around in there. You know, on the outside as well too, but most importantly for the function first is getting all that carbon buildup out of there, nice and thoroughly cleaned so that it's functioning, reliable, dependable. So there it is, that's the kit, brush, Q-tips, microfiber towel, bore snake. You got everything you need, real field expedient, effective, great little kit. You know, this is all in one. This is something you can build yourself to. Old toothbrush, Q-tips, you know, bore snake would probably be the only thing you really need to buy, and then some CLP, but that's it. So just give you a good quick idea of what you're working with there. Now, you know, oil up the bolt. You can put a little bit on the inside of the receiver there. You just want to make sure it's not oozing out. So we got a nice little generous application in there. I'm going to wipe some of the excess off. All right, now we're going to go ahead and put our charging handle recoil spring back in. Just go ahead and slide it through the ejection port there. Make sure you get that little tab on the guide rod to locate on that little dimple inside the receiver right there. All right, so we got our guide rod located right there in that little notch, that dimple inside the receiver. We'll take our opposite hand and compress this spring, holding with our thumb here on the charging handle. Make sure it stays fully compressed. All right. Now you're going to take your bolt. That little notch there in the front is going to locate inside the charging handle just like that. So you're going to get it right in there and compress the two. Now, if it gives you a little bit of a fight like this, that means it's not completely compressed. So you can take your punch and just push it again, making sure that you've got every little bit. There you go. It'll fit just like that. So it's a bit of a snug fit. You really got to make sure that charging handle is completely compressed rearward to get that bolt to lock in and locate in place. Now you want to make sure you grab your bolt stop pin and drop it right into the back of the receiver here. All right. Now we're good to go. The receiver is completely put back together. Let's go ahead and put the rest of the 1022 back together. All right, so this is all we got left on the 1022 reassembly. So we'll take our trigger assembly, we'll take our receiver, and we're going to put these two back together. Make sure your hammer is locked back. Make sure your ejector is forward like so. All right, we'll go ahead and line up those holes on the receiver with the holes on the actual trigger assembly. We'll take our two takedown pins and we'll drop them right in. Remember, they are universal, so don't worry about getting them mixed up. All right. Get those pins right in. Now we can go ahead and drop the receiver into the stock. All right, so we'll drop it right in. Now, upon reassembly, it's similar to the way we took it apart, so you got to make sure that safety clears the stock. So we got the safety through. Now we'll take our takedown screw. We'll insert that right here. Take our 4mm Allen key, and we'll tighten it right up. Go ahead and snug it up a little bit. All right, we're good. Now we can go ahead and put the barrel back on. So it just goes together like so. You're just gonna put it at an angle just like this. Slides right in. You hear it kind of locate and lock and snap in place. Now that we get our 1022 back together, let's go ahead and do a quick function check, make sure we did it right. So we'll take a dummy round snap cap. This just protects our firing pin on any 22 rimfire. And we'll go ahead and throw it in the mag, drop it right in, put that dummy round in the chamber. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and place it on safe, pull the trigger, nothing, good. Place it on fire, pull the trigger. Oh man, let's measure this trigger pull. That feels fantastic. Let's see what kind of modified trigger pull we got. 1 pound, 7.3 ounces. Let's take one more to confirm. 1 pound, 7.2 ounces. Well, there you have it, guys. From 3 pounds down to 1.5 pounds, 50% trigger pull reduction. Really fantastic improvement. Most of that reduction is coming from the trigger spring kit, but that polishing is going to give you that nice, smooth, clean trigger pull. It's really a phenomenal feel. It's a night and day difference. Not to mention, it is very cost effective. You don't need to blow a ton of money to get a nice trigger on your 1022. I highly recommend going this option. Really, all you need is a nice spring replacement and some polishing, a little bit of time, and you're in there. Really hope you guys found this useful, not to mention the how-to cleaning. And it was a long video, so if you stuck with me all the way to the end, thank you for watching. And if you found it useful, we always appreciate a like or a subscribe on YouTube. It really helps us out, and it's a good way to show your support. If you got a comment, throw it in there. I'd love to hear what you guys are doing, what you think of this kit, what you think of the video, what you think of actually polishing the internals. You want to see more of that? Really appreciate you guys. Thank you, MCARBO Brotherhood, for your ideas and your support. And as always, happy shooting.